Merrill Memo with Matthew Dickerson from Dubbo Regional Council.
Last hour on Drive, you heard from Virgin CEO Jane Herdlicker. She told me they're going to partner with Rex Airlines to support their regional business. Around 350 Rex Airlines staff have been stood down today, and more are expected to come, including in regional areas, despite those flights remaining operational. Matthew Dickerson is the chair of Regional Cities New South Wales and is mayor of Dubbo Regional Council. Welcome to you, Mayor.
Yeah, g'day. How you going?
Very well. Can you just talk to me about the role Rex plays in regional communities? I've had the privilege of being in your community and knowing the importance of links, transport links to bigger cities nearby. What would happen if that went under?
Certainly, there's a few things to consider there if we did lose Rex, and it doesn't seem like there's talk about that at this stage, but I'll go through and just explain some of the areas, I suppose, where I see Rex plays an absolutely vital role in regional locations. There are some locations that are serviced by two airlines, and that's fantastic. But even in those areas that are served by two airlines, you've still got the competition that Rex brings to the table, which keeps those prices at least reasonable. And again, competition does that with prices. So in Dubbo, as one example, we've got Qantas and we've got Rex, and the prices for both seem pretty reasonable because you've got that competition. But again, if we use Dubbo as an example, we had 195,000 passengers go through our airport last year. It'd be very difficult for just one airline to be able to service all those passengers. Having Qantas and Rex there has allowed us to have that capacity, those number of people, but also the frequency. Rex between Dubbo and Sydney, for example, 5 flights a day. Add it in the Qantas flights, you've got good frequency of flights, and so it means that you're able to get those flights at a convenient time. When you start to look broader across New South Wales, there are 8 of the regional cities. You mentioned that I'm regional cities chair. There are 8 of those regional cities of the 15 cities where Rex services those. And again, they're playing a vital role, sometimes as a secondary airline. In some locations, they're the only airline. And they're the areas I think that would be devastating for those communities to lose Rex if that was to happen, because it is a vital link through to Sydney to be able to have things like medical services, professional services in both directions. It's not just about people from regional communities being able to access Sydney, but it's also about professionals, medical staff, people that need to be out in these regional communities, being able to get access to those regional communities. And then further afield, many of these regional cities we're talking about have got a service centre mentality where you don't just come into a Dubbo or a Tamworth or a Wagga, you service people around that entire region. So flying into that main central point is important, but then you go further afield to service people in those wider areas. So it does play a vital role, and we hope it continues to play a vital role.
So vital that you would lobby or expect the federal government to offer Rex a lifeline?
Well, that's a really interesting question. When you start to get to the stage of offering lifelines, of offering bailouts, it becomes difficult because you look at competitors and they might justifiably say, well, we've run our airline and we've been making enough money that we can continue to operate. Why is an airline that hasn't been run to the same level being offered a bailout? So I'm not convinced that I'd be arguing for a bailout as such, but maybe you need to look at the conditions overall with travel. And if you're going to do something like that, it might be supporting regional travel. I know in some places, Western Australia, for example, sometimes in some of those regional locations, they'll support all airlines that fly into a regional location. So it's an even playing field. So that might be a fairer way to do it rather than just bailing out one individual airline. So it's a tricky area that you've gone to there.
You make a good point about fairness, and Rex has complained about having issues accessing to the slots at Sydney Airport at peak times. The CEO of Virgin Australia, Jane Herdlicker, told us that slot hoarding isn't the issue. The Federal Transport Minister, Catherine King, told Breakfast this morning the same thing.
The issue of slots has not been the issue that we have said. This is not the issue. I think it's the speculation that that's why this has happened, I think is unhelpful and in fact not necessarily the case.
Do you have any insight into that from what you hear?
I've had several meetings relating to slots. I call the person at Sydney Airport the slot master and the person who basically makes sure that slots are dealt with fairly. I've certainly had discussions with the Minister, Catherine King, around slots, because one of the things that's crucial for regional locations is to make sure that we do retain slots for regional locations. It does seem...
So did slot hoarding crush Rex?
I don't think slot hoarding crushed Rex, but I'm not an expert on their business model, so I suppose it's difficult for me to say what's the cause of the current predicament that Rex finds itself in. So I'm not an aviation expert. I don't want to make comments around the business model. I suppose more around making sure that regional locations have got access to those slots. Because if I'm the owner of Sydney Airport, I would prefer to have planes as large as possible flying in, because I get to charge a per passenger fee. It's better for my business model at Sydney Airport to have larger planes. That means that maybe I'm going to have more planes coming from Melbourne or Brisbane or Perth than I am coming from Dubbo or Orange or Tamworth, because they're bigger planes that they're flying in. So I think it's crucial, and I know Catherine King is looking at slots at the moment from the last discussion I had with her about this, to see how we make sure slots are dealt with fairly, but also make sure we've got slots that are retained for regional locations. That seems to be a very important part of the overall process.
Matthew Dickinson is the Chair of Regional Cities New South Wales and the Dubbo Regional Council Mayor. Great to talk to you this afternoon, Matthew.
Always my pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Merrill Memo with Matthew Dickinson from Dubbo Regional Council.